The question we are discussing is explain array and traversal in array. Now this is array related question, so the category is array of course, and there will be three relative questions. Normally when you have a variable, it can store only one value. For example, we have variable like this where I say let I is equal to 10. It means there is one location in which value 10 is stored. If I say I is equal to 20 in the next line, it means the value is overwritten. So at a time, only one value is stored. When you feel that you want to store more values under one name, then you can use an array. Array is available in all programming languages. Few languages support only specific type of array. Let's say an array of integer cannot have string value. But in JavaScript, we have array which can store any type of value. In fact, we have array class, and arrays are the prototype of this class. Let's create an array and see a few fundamentals quickly. How do we create an array in JavaScript? Like this, let arr is equal to. We have the square bracket. This is a shorter way to create an array. Of course, we can write like this also, let arr is equal to new array, because array is the main class. But this is a better way when we say square brackets and we give list of data here. For example, I give 4, 7, 9. Let's create another array, array1. Here I want to show that we can have any type of data in it. Like I have a string, then a boolean value, and let's say some number. Let's print both the arrays, arr and arr1. I will just run this code. As you see that both the arrays are displayed here. Let's try to understand internally what actually happens. Internally, this array, for example, where we have high, true and 900, looks something like this. Each location has this value. Now this location is given a number. This number is called as the index number. So this is the lower index, and here 0, 1 and 2. 2 is the upper index or upper boundary. If you see each location like this high or maybe true or 900, this each location is called as an element. So this array is of 3 elements. In fact, we can have console log where I can say arr or arr1 dot length. This length property gives me total number of elements in an array. So if I run this, we'll get 3 here because we have 3 elements in this array. Now if you want to refer only one element, then you can use the square bracket and the index number. So let's say I just want to have first element of this array. So I say array 1 of 0, that is square bracket and the index number. So if I save this and run, I'll get only the high value, not the entire array. So these are different syntaxes we use, right? We can also say here, if I want to get the last element of every array, I can say console log arr of. Now here what I'll do is I'll say arr dot length -1, right? So this is going to refer the last index number. So this will display the last value, that is 9 of the first array. So this is a common way to declare an array or access individual elements. We can in fact have an array of object literal. Say for example, I'll declare one array where I just say that there will be multiple elements and each element will be an object literal. For example, I'll say p code, product code for example, value 1, product name. I'll say for example Apple. I'll copy this 2 more times. Now I'm going to assign different values here. Let's say instead of apple, I'll say banana and orange. And here in the P code, I'll say 2 and 3. What does this mean? It means now each element of array is an object literal. So let's try to print the value of this array. I'll say console log arr and we run this. You see that this entire array is displayed. It means if I say ARR of 0, let's say here, I'm going to refer individual element, right? So this will display the first object itself, only the apple, and product code is 1. In case if you just want to refer the product name, so you can say dot pname. Let's see the output. Only apple is returned. So these are different syntaxes we can try with array. Now let's talk about traversal. Traversal means we are going to navigate through an array. We will begin with the most traditional way, that is loop till the last element. How do we do that? For example, I create an array. Let's say let ARR is equal to, I'll create an array of few strings only. Let's say ES5, we have ES6, ES7, and I put ES8. Now we have 4 elements here. If I want to traverse through this array, the most common way is we declare a variable which begins with the 0th index. We go till the last element and we increment this I by 1, for example. This is the index number. And here, let's try to refer. So I'll say console log ARR of I. So every time this statement is displayed, right, it's going to refer 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So if I run this, we are going to get all the elements individually. This is one of the very common way to traverse through, but each language has its own way or method also to loop through the array. For example, in JavaScript ES6 onwards, we have for in and for off. There are 2 ways to loop through an array. So let's try those 2 ways also. I'll say for loop, then let an element. At the moment I'm not saying element because this is kind of index number, so I'll say I, or let's say element only. Let element in ARR. So now this is going to loop through individual element. But the thing is, when you use the in operator, it is going to return the index number and not the value. Let's try this. I'll say console log element. I'll save this and run the code. As you see that it says 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. If we have more values, it will be more. But ideally, it doesn't display the value. So in is not a very preferable way or not a very common way to use, because generally when you loop through the array, the concern is the value and not the index number. So you have the off operator. So if you use off, it's going to refer the value directly and not the index number. So right now if I run the code, now you see all the elements are displayed. So this is the difference between for in and for off. In will display the index number and off will return the element directly, which is a faster way to loop through. But in or off, when you run with this kind of code, you are not going to see any difference as long as the speed is concerned, right? But still, when it comes to referring the value, you go with off also. So far we have seen all the traversal ways using loop. There are many methods who loop through the array and return a new array like map or filter, which we will discuss in some other questions. But at the moment, we will see one method which is there to only traverse through the array, and that method is the forEach method. In this code, I'm going to use forEach. So I'll say array dot forEach. Now this actually takes a callback function as an argument. At the moment, our concern is that I write a function here. Now I'm using the traditional syntax, but I can use the arrow syntax also. Let me use arrow syntax. So I'll remove this function and put an arrow. So we have the arrow here. Now this callback function is filled with few parameters. The first parameter is the element itself. That means every time the forEach is executed, the element, that is this value, is passed to element here. And if you want to refer the index number, that is also passed. So every time the loop is executed, the element is passed in first parameter. And if you have written index, let's say I write index here, then the index is passed here. We can illustrate it like this, that this value is passed here every time, and index passed here. Let's try to display both the values. I'll say console log element and also the index number I want to display. Let's loop through the array now. Let's see the output. As you see that we have both the element and index number returned. In fact, it also takes two more arguments, array on which the forEach is called and this argument which is a this for the callback function. But now when you are using arrow function, this will not refer to itself, right? So you have to take care which function you are using. You are going with the traditional function or arrow function. So it does matter with this argument. For each cannot be stopped in between, like you break the loop. So if you have a situation where you want to come out of a loop in between, then for each isn't the method you should use. Now let's discuss relative questions of this topic. The first question is, what is the difference between for in and for off? We have already seen that for in will display the index, whereas for off will refer the value. What will be the output of the below code? Now see, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot break the for each loop. It's going to go through the entire array. So when you say index is equal to 2, for example, then I want to come out. If you say break statement, it is going to give an error. Let's try this here. I'll simply say if index is equal to 2, then what happens? I want to come out. That's what my wish is, but it's not going to happen, right? It gives you the error. It won't work. It's illegal break statement. The third question is, what will be the output of below statements? So in this case, what are we trying to display is array.length, that is array of 3, because array.length will return 3, right? Because there are 3 elements. This will display undefined because there is no such thing called array of 3, because we have 0, 1 and 2 because index starts with 0. So if this code is run, then it's going to say undefined. So we have discussed various possibilities and questions of looping through the array in JavaScript. Next questions, we are going to deal with more advanced topics of array.